Hey everybody, I'm Mike Marza. This is an Eyewitness News election update, and we are now in day 2 of what has turned into a 3-person race. Today, Zohran Mamdani, Andrew Cuomo traded jabs to one another, and Curtis Sliwa saying, by the way, I'm in this race and I'm not going to go anywhere. Eyewitness News reporter N.J. Burkett joining us now. N.J., you've been out on the campaign trail. We're going to play some clips from some of the conversations you've had with the candidates in recent days and, in fact, in recent hours. But first up, just set the landscape for us. Mayor Adams out of this race about 48 hours now. Where do we stand?
Well, at this point, right, as you said, we're in day 2 of a 3-way race. And what we're seeing now is that Mamdani and Adams are really sharpening their attacks on one another and essentially conducting the campaign over the head of Curtis Sliwa, who, as you said, insists he's not going anywhere. And I think now he's really sort of struggling to get traction, struggling to get attention. But remember, I mean, he's been polling 16, 17, 18%. So really, for the first time in Sliwa's career, he's become a power broker in New York City politics, Mike.
Yeah, really interesting. We know he ran in the general election last go-around and lost to Mayor Adams. He wears the beret. He loves feral cats. Right, and all these sort of interesting characteristics that people point to, but he very much is a player in this election. You actually caught up with Zohran Mamdani today because he's sharpening this attack against Andrew Cuomo, labeling him as a friend of the billionaires and really reliant on that money. Here's a portion of what Mamdani said when you ask him what he thinks Cuomo would do with all the money, trying to make this point in this contrast between the working class in New York and the billionaires. Listen to this.
I really don't know, because what we're seeing is that hundreds of thousands of dollars are being spent to send out ads that say that I have a nice smile and I'm a nice guy. And they purport to represent the views of New Yorkers, yet what we found is, in fact, they're using stock imagery. Because to actually speak to the people of this city is to understand that their concerns go far beyond the question of which politician will work with Donald Trump, and instead they are looking for a leader that will serve the people of this city. And so there will be an immense amount of money that is spent in this general election, but those donors will find the same thing they found in the primary, which is that there is no amount of money that can suppress New Yorkers' desire for change.
NJ, he's been very consistent on this attack, particularly against Andrew Cuomo. What was your take today from Mamdani?
Yeah, well, look, Mamdani is expert at staying on message. You know, he comes to a press conference, he knows exactly what he wants to say, and in a very impressive way. You know, as somebody who does public speaking for a living, and obviously you do too, he's very impressive at staying on message and being able to articulate what it is he wants to say very effectively. And he's portraying Cuomo, accurately or inaccurately, as a guy who's a rich guy who's out of touch from a privileged family and doesn't really get how working New Yorkers are trying to live, Mike.
And it's interesting because when you talk about who is championing for the working class, at one point Curtis Sliwa, in fact, some of the things he says today, if you took the names off of the quotes, you would say, well, that's something that Sliwa said, but it's something very similar to what Mamdani has been saying. Now today, Sliwa was asked again whether or not he would be willing to drop out, which would change the dynamic of the race if you believe the current polling. Here's what Curtis Sliwa said to that.
I'm not dropping out. Every hour, I go 20 hours a day, 20 hours a day campaigning in the streets. And let me tell Andy Cuomo to come off his high chair and actually come out into the streets and campaign with the people. Because he goes to a church, a synagogue, a mosque. It's within a closed, contained area, and he's never out with the people. I'm out there where the Zohranistas are, because I know they're out in the street, and the Sliwa supporters are in the street, and that's where this election is going to be won. I trust the people to make the proper choice. I don't trust the billionaires or the professional political class, because guess what? They've been wrong all about this. You know, it's almost like these billionaires give me vertigo. Maybe they know Wall Street, but they don't know the streets. They're going back and forth. First we love Cuomo, he's no good. Then we love Adams, he's no good. Now they're back to Cuomo. I don't have any of their money. I don't want any of their money. In fact, you'll see that I have filed more money collected from average New York City residents than the combination of Zohran Eric Adams and Cuomo combined to get me the matching funds.
And so you heard again from the Republican candidate echoing that phrase that he's been saying, nobody, I can't be bought, I'm not going to be shootout. He factors a big deal in this race right now, NJ.
Well, yeah, he is. And, in listening to Curtis make that point, and that's a point that he's made over and over again the last several weeks, I mean, that is so striking because that's what passes for a Republican in New York City at this point. Curtis Sliwa is trying to strike a populist message while being a Republican candidate. For example, the other day, when there was that issue with the ICE agent shoving the woman at 26 Federal Plaza, Sliwa actually said, I disagree with President Trump's policy about taking otherwise law-abiding migrants and dragging them off the street with these masked guys. He says, that's wrong. If they're showing up as scheduled for a hearing on their immigration status, and then you drag them off the street, he says, that's wrong. So that's Curtis Sliwa, the Republican populist.
Yeah, and keyword there, the Republican, and then you have some of these reports out there that President Trump is trying to weigh whether or not to try to make some influence here or sort of impress upon people in this city to vote for somebody other than the Republican candidate. Let's move to Andrew Cuomo, because you sat down with him for an extended interview yesterday, and I thought it was really interesting to get your take because you've known him for a long time. He's been in the public eye, of course, former governor and all of that. But now he's running for mayor in a much different dynamic when you have this 33-year-old who has soared to the front of the polling here. So much so that it forced Andrew Cuomo to run as an independent. You ask former Governor Cuomo if he believes that President Trump is trying to influence this race and perhaps favor him in a matchup against Mamdani. And here's what he said.
I'll tell you who Donald Trump wants. Donald Trump wants Zohran Mamdani to win for two very good reasons. Number one, it would be a political bonanza for the Republican Party. They would take the poster of Zohran and run around the country and say, this is how crazy the Democrats have gotten. That they elected a 33-year-old socialist who wants to abolish the police, legalize prostitution, legalize the drug trade, and sympathizes with terrorists. It would be a political bonanza. And then secondly, Donald Trump would come in here and take over New York, which he said he would. Listen to people when they tell you the first time. The president said, if Mamdani wins, the federal government will have to come in and take over to protect New Yorkers.
Doesn't that sound like an endorsement of Andrew Cuomo?
No, it's an endorsement of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump would love to be President Donald Trump and Mayor Donald Trump. It would be his dream come true.
NJ, as I mentioned, you spent a lot of time with the former governor. What is your take, and maybe something we didn't see as part of the interview that we have aired, what is your take on where Andrew Cuomo believes he is in this race right now?
Well, Mike, when you sit down with the former governor, you see how feisty he can be. And I will tell you that early in the campaign, like during the primary, for example, he really did not seem very energized. I think there was this sort of air of inevitability with his entering the race, that he would soon be anointed as the Democratic nominee. And he didn't even hold press conferences. He held campaign rallies, and then they would cheer him, he would give a speech, and then he would leave through the back door. And we were all like, wait a minute, are you going to answer questions? And I think that was a problem for him that he didn't anticipate. I would also say that now there's a different Cuomo on the campaign trail. He takes questions from reporters. He'll stand there for 15 minutes, 20 minutes at a time and take questions. He'll spar with reporters, as you heard him with me earlier. He is much more energized, I think. The fact that Adams is now out of the race, in his opinion, that's a game changer, Mike.
Yeah, because especially on primary night, there was a point where we were all looking around. You even alluded to this or said it outright during our coverage on Eyewitness News. That it seemed like he was done, that he was getting out of the race and not coming back in.
Yeah.
But over the course of the weeks that followed, and then now, you feel like there's a different energy being close to him.
Yeah, it was the best concession speech I'd ever heard. You know, it's like,
right.
Well, wait a minute, are you out? And then, you know, you find out a few weeks later that, no, he's actually in. Well, obviously, he got on the phone with a lot of people and said, hey, am I going to have any money to mount another campaign? And if I do, I promise you that I will be energized and I will get out there. He all but acknowledged that he ran a terrible campaign. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of political observers and analysts in New York City over the last several weeks, and they say, they agree with me, that was probably the worst political campaign in recent New York City history. I mean, he ran ads on television, you know, flooded the airwaves, you know, trashing Mamdani, explaining that he was a danger to New York, and Trump is coming for New York. Who can best stand up to him? It's Andrew Cuomo. But he never took questions from the press. So I think that he's chastened. To the extent that Andrew Cuomo could ever be chastened about anything, I think that he realizes now that he's in the fight of his life and he's determined to win it. And the fact that Adams is out of the race now says to me that he has a path. It's not going to be an easy path, Mike.
Well, and we'll see. He's down in the polls right now, but as we know, the only poll that really matters is November 4th. N.J. Burkett, we love your perspective. Thanks for jumping on here, man, and breaking down the race as only you can. Thank you, sir. We'll catch all the reports, as always, on Eyewitness News. And we invite you to stay with us as we are now 5 weeks away from the election for the City Hall position of mayor in New York City, the largest city in this country. ABC-7NY is where you can get up to date with all the alerts, everything you need to know, and Eyewitness News as well. I'm Mike Marza. Have a great day.